What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Questioning Constructs. We are your hosts. I am John, and
And I'm Rebecca. Welcome
wel-
back.
welcome. Today, Rebecca's going to go ahead and start us off. Got a couple things we wanted to talk about. Shoot.
Yeah. So I actually have two things that are related, but I figured that a scenario would be fun to start with. A little game, if you will. Did you ever play the island game, maybe in like middle school
The
or high
island
school?
game.
Where, so in a classroom, they put you in like little groups, and then they're like, you're on an island, and these are the stranded party members with you, and you have to survive. And
No,
you
I
have,
can't say that I have.
really?
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not familiar.
Okay, this is gonna be really fun then. So, usually this is a game that is played in school or just with groups of people to build up communication and strategy and teamwork, working together, and survival skills. So, you're given a scenario and you're only given a list of a couple of items, and then you have to talk about as a team which X amount of items like are you taking with you to the island, or if you're already stranded, like which items are you taking out of that list to have with you to play through the scenario. And then by the end of it, you see like if you've survived or if you guys didn't really make the best choices. So that's the first thing that I figured we could do. See how it would be interesting to see our thought processes for like what items that we would want to bring. And then I have another question about like just long term survival on the islands that I think would be really fun. Okay, so let me share my screen. And I don't want any of that. Here we go. All right. Cool. Can you see my screen?
I see a Word document.
Okay, great. Because I can't see you right now. So,
All right.
all right.
Mind if I read through the background?
You can go for
All
it.
right, background. You and
Oh,
a
wait. That's supposed
companion,
to be John. So just change that to John. I asked ChatGPT to give us details.
John, formerly known as Alex, were on a small research vessel exploring marine life near a remote archipelago in, in the South Pacific. A sudden storm hit, capsizing the boat and leaving you both stranded on a tiny island called Zerana, known only to a few due to its isolated location. The island is believed to have excuse me, to have a few natural resources. I think you can get rid of the A in that. Believed to have few natural resources and would. Sorry, I'm being silly. You don't actually have to get rid of it.
I know.
I'm believed to have few natural resources and with no visible signs of rescue coming anytime soon, you both need to rely on your wits and the limited items from your overturned boat to survive. All right, we've got some facts about the island.
Yep.
It's roughly 1.5 square miles. Don't know how big that is, but cool. Climate, it's tropical with high humidity, frequent
So think
rainfall,
Thailand.
and temperature ranging. Wait, you said Highland?
No, I said think like Thailand.
Oh, Thailand. Okay. I'm gonna think like Puerto Rico. Um, Frequent rainfall and temperatures ranging between 75 and 85 degrees Fahrenheit.
Also, can I
Veget
just point out that is
Shoot.
not tropical. That's like Maryland weather.
75 to 85 degrees, high humidity, frequent
Yeah.
rainfall. It's the high humidity and frequent rainfall that gets me. But yeah, it is very, like, it's not far off at all. Vegetation, the island has thick jungle vegetation, palm trees, and a few small freshwater lagoons. Lagoon? And
Lagoon.
just a singular, only one. There's one freshwater lagoon, singular. Wildlife. We've got birds, small lizards, and a few type of edible fruits such as coconuts and bananas. There are also plenty of insects, especially near the lagoon. Water sources. The island has one freshwater lagoon, really, fed by underground springs. The ocean provides salt water, but it is not drinkable without desalination,
Desalination. Des-
terrain, mostly flat with some rocky outcrops along the shore, providing basic shelter but no caves. Boo! Oh, darn!
Honestly, if we were to ever get shipwrecked anywhere, this sounds like a pretty legit place already. We got fresh water and we got fruits right off the bat
I
and
don't
basic
want to
shelter.
be shipwrecked anywhere. I'm good.
Well, we're shipwrecked today. So, this is what we're working with. And
Sure.
so I asked ChatGPT to give us a list of 15 items and just to make it a little bit of a challenge, we're going to have to bring it down to 10 items that like
Okay.
washed ashore with us. So we had 15 items in the boat and then 10 of those washed ashore with us. So first thing is we're going to have to get rid of 5 items. So the list of items, so we have a machete, a 5-gallon plastic container, first aid, a fire starter kit, a hunting knife, emergency blanket, portable water purifier, a fishing kit, a compass, a plastic tarp, a 50-foot paracord, protein bars, a flashlight, a notebook and pen, and a cooking pot.
So are we, uh, uh, is this a collective thing where we're both
Yeah,
deciding together or?
yeah.
Okay.
So we have to decide on 5. To be honest, the thing I think that is the least helpful on this list is a notebook and pen. Like,
I'd be getting rid of the notebook and pen. I'd be
cool.
getting rid of the I think
Put it down here in case we need it later.
I'd be getting rid of the
I almost want to say the water purifier if we have fresh
I
water.
I think so.
Yeah.
Um
Because you can always boil water if you really need to.
Actually, I don't know. Because really it's between that and the cooking pot. Um, for me. Because the cooking pot is give or take. Um, I don't know that you're actually going to be using it a lot for food, even though that's like there are two things you're using the cooking pot for, right? You're
Mhm.
using it for water, boiling water, and
Mhm.
then you're using it for cooking. Although, now that I think about it, something that I don't see here is any kind of shovel. So maybe the cooking pot,
Oh, that's
not
interesting.
used as a cooking pot, but used as a simple digging tool
Yeah.
to dig a little faster, might be useful. So
Yeah.
with that, I lean towards the cooking pot on that one. I'm gonna get rid of the portable water purifier if you're okay with that.
Yeah. So, one thing that I thought of after that, I actually am for the cooking pot, keeping it. The digging was really creative. I wasn't thinking about that, but let's say something happens, or even if you get food, like the boiling water, if something happens and you need to actually purify something, you're going to need a container to cook something in. And so I would actually be for getting rid of the 5-gallon plastic container, even though you can store something in that. You have the cooking pot, and
I agree.
I feel
I'm
like that
good
it's
on
more versatile than the plastic container.
the gallon plastic container. I'm good on the cooking pot. I'm good on the notebook and pen. Um,
Okay.
okay.
Okay, and if we have the cooking pot, I'd be okay getting rid of the purifier.
So wait, if we're already doing it like this,
We just need to get down to 10. And then it's like survive on the island essentially.
oh, so can we just choose 10 out of this list?
Yeah.
Okay. So, because I think it's easier to talk out of necessity, right? So
Okay.
things that are non-negotiable for me
Uh-huh.
are the 50-foot paracord. Absolutely must have.
Hmm. And why is that? That's an interesting. Is that like your first choice out of anything?
Um, I don't think it's my first choice. I think it goes underutilized in the sense of there are a lot of things you can do with paracord. Paracord is
Yeah.
a pretty life saving item to have when you're stranded. When it
Agreed.
comes from when it comes to anything from hunting, setting traps, building small shelters,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
creating just anything to alert you of anything. Say you're worried about
Yeah.
something on the like anything like that. Paracord is uber useful. Shoot, if you want to make a spear using some rocks that are sharp, or even shells off the beach,
Mhm. Mhm.
along with a long stick from a tree because it's tropical. Paracord easily creates a spear, which now gives you a better opportunity to hunt.
Yeah.
You can use paracord in a number of different really
Yep.
useful ways.
Yeah.
I think you can even create a rudimentary fire starting kit using paracord, using the paracord itself as a tool to run like
Oh,
a
what is it
stick.
called? A bow drill or something?
Yeah,
That's
and create like a bow drill.
Mhm.
It's a relatively simple tool, but uber useful in creating high heat really
Yeah.
fast,
Mhm.
which eliminates the need for a fire starter kit, especially in this kind of situation where like really what you're looking for is multi-utility uses outside of instead of single utility use items. So
Mhm.
something like the fire starter kit is specifically going to be uh, for one thing and one thing only:
Mhm.
starting
So,
fires.
yeah. I do agree with you. I also have seen videos where I think the person only had like a 10-foot paracord, and what he did is he literally took it apart and used each of the fibers inside for something different. So you could also extend the life of the paracord that way. I do agree with you with the paracord. The fire kit, honestly, I wish it would have said, I didn't read through this, right? But I wish the fire kit would have said flint
I
instead of
feel like so
waterproof matches
here's the
because
thing with the fire kit. I'm hesitant to take it in almost any scenario where you have a multitude of options, unless it's literally the best option. Um, One of the biggest reasons why is because you can create almost like a fire starting kit yourself, just collecting sap from trees and kindling on the ground, right? That's really like there's some really clever ways of doing that kind of on your own without necessarily just having the tools already ready made there for you. Of course it's useful if you have it, but again, if we're like dropping it down to the 10 most useful items, it may not make the list. I'm not ready to
mm,
take it off, but the 50-foot paracord definitely kind of extends itself in the direction of being able to help create fires.
hmm.
Um,
And this is why I wanted to do this because I find how people think, especially in survival scenarios, so fascinating. And I was sure that you and I would have some differences. The fire starter kit is actually one of almost, if not the number one for me, because even with people who practically live outside or are so used to hunting and or like the shows because I watch the show Alone where they basically are only given 10 items. Not a single time that a person decided not to choose the to start out with flint because you're only given a list and you pick 10 and like you take those 10 items plus it's like very minimal clothing, like
Yeah.
only a few sets of clothing. And there's not been a single time where where the person has decided to not take the flint that they made it far. And we're talking about people who actually know how to use a bow drill and know all these different
Well,
ways to make fire. I am not confident in my skills to do that. Um and
here's what I'll say when it comes to that, because I agree to an
mhm,
extent, right? Which is why I'm not ready to take it off the kit. It just
mhm,
kind of is a mark against it. Um, what it does is it allows you to save. So let's imagine this scenario we're in where we are on an island trying to survive, right?
mhm.
Um, how much time do you save if you can start building fires immediately versus having to forage for makeshift way to build fire?
A
And
lot, but also the
your
calories.
your
Think about
early time is super essential, right?
mhm,
Like when you're first hitting the island, it's super essential. To your point, the calories, right? How much energy are you expending on days two, three, four? So if you do have the flint, you're eliminating like a lot of
mhm,
having to go search out. I don't know that waterproof matches and the kindling is worth it. I don't think it is, in my opinion, which is why I'm again a lot lower on the list for me, but not out, not out.
mhm,
Um, I just think there are other ways to do it if it's just the waterproof matches and kindling.
mm.
Um,
I just yeah, for me, it comes down to a skill thing and also seeing people who have years and years of experience starting fires not be able to start fires.
yeah.
Um, and plus, like, fire is so versatile, I wouldn't especially with, like, the rain and stuff, like, you would think being on a tropical island that fire isn't a big deal, but I've watched enough of the show Survivor to see how miserable and just energetically depleted people are just even like a few nights of going without fire in like rainy environments. So I don't know.
Um,
One thing that sticks out, do we really need a compass? We're on a mile and a half big island. And I'm sure any way you kind of look at it, like if you're making your camp on the rocky outcrops by the beach, you like and you're in the
I
jungle, all you have to do is
actually
kind of walk out and then just follow the
I'm
beat.
kind of maybe you're right. Maybe it's a small enough area where you don't need it. I think if it was bigger, then I would probably argue for the compass.
Yeah.
Like if it was not, like, let's be realistic, mile and a half
You can walk a
square
mile
foot.
in 20 minutes.
Exactly.
So,
Right. So
I don't
if
think it's
it
that
took
big.
a couple of hours to go around the entire island,
Mhm.
I don't think not as big of a. I mean, I say that, but a couple of hours is huge in this scenario.
Mhm.
Even still, I don't think a compass is super useful with a mile and a half. I would get rid of it as well.
Okay. And then I was reading the flashlight, battery operated with one set of extra batteries. I feel like while that would be nice to have, at a certain
No,
point,
I'm
I
good.
think yeah, okay.
I don't think I want a flashlight at night.
Well, oh,
In
but what about we don't have it's interesting that it didn't put flare gun in here because they've seen that in a lot of the scenarios, but a flashlight if we only used it to signal if there were lights like on a ship.
um, yeah, I don't know. I'm not sold.
Okay.
I don't think I would keep it.
I'm okay with getting rid of it. So it only leaves one last thing. I mean, I think a machete is. I mean, Definitely. Oh wait, do we have two? We have a hunting knife and a machete.
I would keep both.
Yeah. Machete for hacking down stuff, a hunting knife for
Well, even
cooking
if
could
you
be a
want
second
to,
weapon.
like, even if you want just like, um, it's two of us on an island, right?
Yeah, that's true. Mhm.
Um, I think I would get rid of the fire starter kit here. That's gonna be that's where I kind of land. Again, waterproof matches and kindling. I just don't think kindling on a beach with a coastline where there's rocky coastline, which means there's definitely some sort of wood that has dried out on the beach against the rocky shore. I just there's definitely kindling on this mile and a half, and it's definitely not
Mhm.
taking forever to find it.
Mhm.
On not mile and a half, but mile and a half squared.
Yeah. Honestly, I think the waterproof matches are still it for me because of I was thinking about it again. It's not flint, but it has that strip on the box that you can strike against.
Um,
So,
the
but I
next
don't know
the
with
the oh god,
I was just gonna say, like, does that work with other materials other than what's on the matches?
I just don't like. Again, it's just so um, it's very single specific use, and while I arguably very important use. If we're talking about two people on an island, and the first thing we do is say we need to figure out how to get a fire started, and we can't figure that out on day one. I don't know, especially in a mile and a half. Like that's and
I don't
what
it's
do
not
we
about the
have
kindling for
here?
me. Let's put confidence level on it. How confident are you that we could actually start a fire if
Scroll.
we had nothing?
Go back to the scenario.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm not concerned about finding wood and stuff. It says it's like all jungle, but
Um, okay. So the island has thick jungle vegetation, palm trees, small freshwater lagoon, birds, small lizards, and a few type of edible fruits such as coconuts and bananas. Plenty of insects, especially near the lagoon. Terrain mostly flat with some rocky outcrops along the shore, providing basic shelter but no caves. Uh, Thick jungle vegetation. What does that mean? What is it? What is it? What can I gather from that?
I
Um,
mean, basically anything you want. Like it's going to be a lot of like
well,
climbing vines and
I mean, like as a layman, like is there something as a layman I can recognize when I think of jungle that would help? Because maybe you're right. Maybe the waterproof matches in this scenario are super important. Go
I
back
think
to our items.
I think it buys us time too. Like what's, while like we try and figure out how we're going to make fire, Like
Wait, we didn't we already say the portable water purifier? We were good on getting rid of that.
oh, yeah. I
Okay,
just
we're good.
yeah, I don't know cuz they also tell you not to drink water straight even if it is pure, but we have the cooking pot and we can boil the water while we're practicing lighting fires, I guess.
I
I'm good
mean,
with that.
yeah. What are we left with? Plastic tarp, necessary.
Yeah,
Emergency
for sure.
blanket, necessary. First aid kit, super fucking useful. Um,
100%.
um, Protein bars, useful. Cooking pot, fishing line.
Man, those protein bars are going to go quick.
Yeah, I don't really care about the protein bars too much.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I
But I
mean,
mean,
these are our 10.
yep. Wow, that was pretty that was pretty easy when we got down to it. Yeah, like machete, uh, definitely for cutting down stuff. First aid kit,
In the jungle,
obviously.
too? Yeah.
Yeah. And then fire starter kit, you know, buys time if nothing else. Hunting knife, good for stabbing things, but also get like I was just thinking too about like crabs. It'd be a lot easier to get, I think, into a shell with maybe a hunting knife. Um, Emergency blanket for night, fishing kit for sure on an island to try and catch fish. Man.
Well, I'm thinking
Oh,
about that fishing line. I just think the line itself is super useful for a bunch of
yeah.
things, right? Like,
Uh,
is it good
mhm,
for catching fish? Yes, but is it also
mhm.
good for setting bird traps?
Ooh,
Potentially,
yeah.
right?
Mhm. And something really interesting from when I was watching Alone. So I've watched maybe 5 or 6 seasons of it, and you would think that all the person needed to do is get a ton of food, right? Like if they're put in these remote locations. Okay, so for anyone who hasn't seen the show, it's 10 people. They get a 5-mile radius. And then I guess lots are drawn for like which location they're going to be at. And so they go in with, they're allowed to pick 10 items off of a list, kind of very similar to what we're doing. Those are standard. And then I think they only have like a few pieces of clothing that they can bring with them. And then, of course, all the camera gear. And so they're dropped in all of these very remote locations. And the whole premise of the show is they go in late fall and they have to make it either last man standing through winter or I think there's like a 90-day one or 60 days. And so they change it up every season. But they're dropped in these locations where there is big game. And not a lot of people get big game because the thing that happens is you start to deplete yourself very fast. Um, but the crazy thing is that I didn't realize about the human body until watching that show is you need fat. So you'll see these people, like one person was fortunate enough to bring down a deer and he was set for one of these seasons, but the thing is his body was still starving and he was still losing weight because he didn't have enough fat. So it's so wild to think about, going back to the fish, that you could have all this food, be in a survival scenario, and still die because you don't have fat. And that's like one of the prime nutrients like your brain needs and your organs need. So like your organs will start to shut down. And so you'll find that in these seasons, like all these people, all they want to do is eat fish. At a certain point, they're like, oh, if I just had a fish with like the fat in it. And um so that's just what it made me think of with the fishing kit. I just didn't realize truly how important fat is to the human body until I was watching that show and just saw people wasting away.
I think I'm happy with this list.
I think so too. Okay, so that was fun. I'm going to stop sharing and go back. Okay, so my next question. Um, you heard the questions that people ask. You know, usually it's like getting to know you, and it's usually like, if you're stuck on an island, who would you bring? Or like, kind of the same thing what we did. Like, what items would you bring on to an island? I have a different question for you though. So we're on that island, and we know like we are going to be stuck there for 5 months. So we have those items. What are you doing with your time on the island? What are you filling up your time with? When it's not like, okay, I need to get food or I need to boil water or I need to keep the fire going. Like, what are you doing in your spare time for 5 months when you're on this island?
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I say I don't know because I think it would
You never want to
probably
be stranded.
be, huh?
Yeah, I said you never want to be stranded.
Well, yeah, that too, right? Like, I'm good. I don't want to be stranded. But who wants to be stranded, right? I think what would I spend my time doing? I just feel like so much of my time would be spent on the necessities, on the hunting, on the trying to figure out how to survive. That I don't know like that there would be anything else. But in this hypothetical, if everything was taken care of and I had time, but I had nothing but these resources, truth be told, I would probably build. Like I do what like I'm naturally interested in anyway. I'd
Mm-hmm.
probably pick up whittling, and I
Ooh,
would probably yeah. I mean, I'm really I enjoy woodworking, so like realistically, I would probably try and figure out how to build contraptions or luxury where there is none.
that's cool. What with whittling or a project, what would you build first? I guess like either or. Like in whittling, what would you whittle first? And project wise, what would you build first? The first means of comfort.
Um, I'd build a cat statue. Um,
Aw.
that would be the first thing that I build for
Would
comfort.
you char it in the fire to make it look like cat?
Yeah, yeah.
That's cute.
Yep.
So then what piece of luxury or comfort would you build first?
Um, I would build luxury or comfort. I would build or craft or luxury or comfort in the jungle. And there is we've got palm trees. You and I know from experience that you can do a lot with palm trees.
Yeah.
Those leaves are really useful.
I was just thinking
Um,
of your hat that was taken too
yeah,
soon.
yeah. Too soon. Too soon.
We went on a
Um,
trip to Puerto Rico and we were leaving, and this really nice man had made all these really cool things from palm leaves, and he was so good at it. And John got this awesome hat, and I literally watched security stop John and take his hat.
yeah. Apparently, they're like these micro bugs that are in palm leaves that have potential to wreak havoc on the U.S. Ecosystem if they get into the country. Didn't stop us from getting some palm leaf stuff in, but uh, we were willing to be eco terrorists, it looks like, just for those flowers. And yeah, um, but my hat did not survive the attempted eco terrorism. Um, what would be the first look? There are a lot of things that come to mind, but nothing that I feel firm on. Like, I think what would be super useful or would be a little more luxurious are easier ways to hunt. Shoes. Um,
Mm.
I think it would be a hat. Might be one of the first things I make with the
Oh.
palm leaves.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's like there's a number of things that a boat, some kind of boat, If there's any kind of possibility of that. Like, I don't know. That's really tough because we're talking about a machete. Machete's not taking down any trees. So I don't know how we would do it, but maybe spending time figuring out that. Um,
I think it would take down a palm tree. It would just take a while.
maybe.
Because in a lot of the
The
survival games, you get a machete.
well,
And
the thing is, like, a machete is really useful while it's sharp,
I
right?
know.
So
I
if
was
you
thinking
hack
that
away at
too.
a palm tree, you're pretty screwed.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because you're not going to be doing a lot of hacking of other items, um, which is really useful when it comes to jungle specifically, like
Yeah.
going through the jungle,
Mm-hmm.
hacking down weeds and maneuvering through. Um, what like I can't help but like imagine what would be luxury. What about you?
So I'd probably make some silverware or something to eat with. Um, because that's a small project. Or
See, you
like a
better than
spoon.
me. Man, no need silverware. Man, eat fish off stick.
Well, yeah, I don't know. Like I think it's one of those like, cool, I made myself, I don't know, a spoon. While I'm sitting there. Cuz you said whittling. I don't know if I would take up whittling, but I would probably make something that I could use like a spoon to stir in like water, or if we find some herbs, or I guess you could use a stick too, but I feel like that'd be one of the first things just cuz it would be easier. But then I also was thinking about a bow is a good one that you said. Um like a chair or something. If we're
I
there for 5 months, I'm sure I'd
think
build a chair. I'm sure I would build. You know what? I think I'd build like a backpack or something to help carry what I find back to camp. Like a mile and a half is not a long island, but making the trek easier for me so that way I can always have hands free. Ooh, and I actually another one that I just thought of. If we have this freshwater lagoon, I'd find a way to build something to direct the water to a holding place so I wouldn't have to go all the way every single time.
I think I know what I would do. I've
What would you
decided.
do?
The first luxurious thing that I would make for myself is a backpack.
Mm,
I think that is supremely important,
yeah.
actually, when it comes to collecting resources,
Mhm.
collecting food,
Mhm.
shoot, even collecting other palm leaves in order to make other things
Yep.
like baskets or
Mhm.
like, other hats or what have you. I think a backpack of sorts would be the thing that I make
Mhm.
first. That's where I'm settled.
Yeah.
That's what I'm going with.
I would do backpack first, but then I think I'd also do like storage bins or find some way to make a holding container. Um so that way whatever you collect, can be in one place, or if it's something that's perishable, figure out like do I need to dig down deep in the sand to keep it cool? Like I don't know how else I would keep. Like let's just say there's like mushrooms or I don't know, edible flowers or something. Those I don't think would last very long in a humid climate. Um yeah, I also there were some really cool when I was watching Alone, people would build these really cool stoves. So they'd have the fire underneath it and out of like mud and or like clayish mud and rocks and everything and build it up. Absolutely wild. But I think the backpack, I agree with you. It's the most essential one because you don't really know what you're going to find. We could find another 5-gallon container on the island. So,
I think it is a luxurious item that I would definitely go for. It makes life so much easier.
Actually, I agree with you. I realized what I would do for my second item. I'd
What
make one
would
of
you?
those fish baskets,
Mm.
the ones that are woven together so that way when the fish goes in they can't go out. And I'd probably make quite a few of those
Oh,
and dump
so
them.
kind of like a net, like a
Mhm.
yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's pretty solid.
'Cause it's
Um,
I think to the fish it looks kind of like a cave or a hiding spot, but there's a portion of the inside of the basket that's jutted inwards, so like it can go in, but it can't actually go out.
mm, yeah, it's pretty useful.
Mhm.
Um, second item. What's the second thing I'm making? Um, in this scenario, have we already made shelter or no? Because maybe I changed
Yeah.
my first item. Okay.
I would say that's more
So
of like first thing
the
you do is make a
necessity,
shelter.
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Day one, we got to start figuring out how we're covering ourselves. I think the next thing that I'm doing, luxury. I think the second thing that I'm doing for luxury is dang. I thought this was a good idea, and then I thought about it some more and immediately killed it. Don't love that one. Let me think. I'm gonna think some more about the second thing.
Well, see, now I'm curious. What were you going to say?
I was gonna say I would work on second thing I would do. I change it altogether. The second thing I would do is for luxury is I would craft an axe.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a hatchet, like a hatchet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And I think that's relatively in the realm of doable. Can I
Mhm.
see myself getting a relatively strong stick? Can
Mhm.
I see myself getting vines or using
Mhm.
paracord?
Mhm.
Can I not stick branch? I should say that elicits stronger material. But can I see myself getting a particularly slim rock that's been shaped
Mhm.
along the coast?
Especially because
Um,
it's a rocky coast or like a what did it say? Rocky outcrops.
yeah, can I see myself getting other rocks and then banging against the edge of that rock to create
Mhm.
a sharp point?
Mhm.
Can I see myself taking the cord and kind of like not wrapping, excuse me, cutting a notch into this thicker branch and
Mhm.
then wrapping the cord in
Mhm.
along with the thing there and then having this makeshift hatchet.
Mhm.
I think that's within reason as a layman for me to do.
Oh
Like
yeah.
with no experience, I think it would take a little bit of time, but I think I could do it.
Mhm.
Um, it would take time, but we're talking about luxury at this point, so I have time. Um,
Well, not to
yeah,
mention practicality, you create that. Uh Now you've just opened the door to actually make the boat and
that's
you know,
true. The
get like
second thing that
larger
I
pieces of
was
fire.
the second thing
Oh.
that I was thinking of that I kind of turned down before the hatchet is a toilet. It's a I was gonna take wood and build like a makeshift sitting stool, and we'd
Hmm.
have like a dedicated part of the island to go take deuces. Um, and then I was thinking, well, how am I going to get that wood? That doesn't make sense. And then I was
Mm.
like, well, if you do that in the jungle and you have one single solitary place, that invites a lot of problems for like
Mhm.
future use because on day three, it's probably dangerous to go sit in that same place, which means this would have to be on the coast somewhere.
Mm.
And then, questions from there kept arising, and I was like, okay, a toilet is not really reasonable.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, a hatchet is. I would do a
I
headshot.
like I like that. I also, because that was a question I always had with Survivor, like, what do they do if they need to go to the bathroom? Are they
Leaves.
burying it? But like, it's sand, so like a good rainstorm, and like there you go. So I don't know. I think they just use the water or like the
I think the
ocean.
water, but um, this is luxury, right? So
Yeah, I know.
like,
Oh, also, I think it's good too. We're two people on an island, not one. So like while you're building an axe, I'm building a way to catch food, and you have two people to delegate tasks between.
listen, no
Mm-hmm.
offense, we would kill each other. So
Ah,
here's what I think. We wouldn't kill each other, but we'd get
no.
frustrated with each other.
But that's
Here's
why the island's a mile and a half.
a mile and a half. That's so. Here's what would be like with us two. I think day one is, well. The thing is, when we're stressed out, when we're both stressed out,
Mm-hmm.
we're both very fiery in our opinion. So all it takes is like one single thing that like we primarily like. I think we should do this first. No, I think we should do
Mm-hmm.
this first, and
Mm-hmm.
that's gonna light the fuse. Um, so
But
I
I'd like to
think
think but I'd like to think though that we're in a different place in life where we can better recognize that. I think it depends on when it happens. Like, are we on day 14 and we don't
that's
have
a
any
very
food?
very fair point.
Like,
That's a
I
very
we
fair point.
neither that's it. I don't think it's that it will happen. I think the determining factor of if we work through it is if we have any food, because you and I do not do well not having food.
That's true. I think it would be so. I think we would delegate with each other. I think that would have
Yeah.
to be the way we do it. Like,
Mhm.
um, when we say two people, I think it would be like, okay, hey, I'll meet up with you in half a day. I'll catch
Right.
you in like 5 hours.
Yeah.
And in 5 hours, go ahead, do your thing.
Mhm.
I'm gonna do this thing. Do we
Mhm.
both think that's a good idea? And then we
Mhm.
bounce and we try to do
Yep.
as much as we can. And
Yep.
more than likely, if we were to keep up like that pace where it feels like, oh, this is we're accomplishing something, more than
Mhm.
likely, if there's that built-in feeling of accomplishment, we're probably checking in with each other so
Yeah.
we can
Yep.
see like progress, right?
Mhm.
I think the key with us specifically would be staying busy. I
Yeah.
think that would be the biggest thing is being able to say, okay, we each think these things are important. Let's go out, knock out as much of what we can on them, come together, and then kind of delegate maybe days in which we put like a singular focus for tasks that take multiple people to do. So, like
Mhm. Mhm.
maybe day one to day two, we spend the first 5 hours separate where we're gathering materials, resources, etc., what we can find,
Mhm.
exploring the
Mhm.
island.
Mhm.
We probably wouldn't even separate for that. So, like, first five
Mm-mm.
hours is probably us just walking the island,
Yeah.
checking out the
Mhm.
perimeter, etc., etc.
Mhm.
Um, the next 5 hours, when do we arrive? Is this in the morning, afternoon? What do you think?
Oh, I didn't even think to, you know, I'd
Because
like
if
to
it's
think
at
it's during.
night, if it's at night, that's way worse.
Yeah. I would like to think that it's during the day, but how many shipwrecks actually wreck during the day? Let's be real. So
Mhm.
even if it is at night, I feel like the only thing we would do is gather the supplies on the beach and drag them to,
On
safety,
the
and
beach,
then,
yeah,
hey, here's a rock, let's crawl under it, and like we'll
yeah.
reassess in the morning, and like that's really all you can do for that first night.
Okay, so imagining first day one, you and I probably are exploring the island together for the first half day.
Mhm.
Um, we don't even know how. We don't have a really good way to tell time. So,
Mhm.
but I think it's reasonable to say that it's something that I would acknowledge pretty quickly and I would say, okay, well, if we are going to go do these things, I'll meet you when the sun is like halfway through the sky.
Yeah. You could
When
also
sun
make a
is up
sundial
top,
too.
right? Very
Mhm.
true. And then
Yeah.
basically meet up at big time. So we explore for the first half of the day, going around the island, kind of licking
Mhm.
our wounds, seeing what we see, and gathering whatever outside material is easy to pick up.
Mhm.
Then we would probably sit down. We'd probably each have or split a protein bar.
Mhm.
And we would probably at that point start figuring out, okay, what's the most important things for us to figure out here, and how do we wanna go about doing it? Okay, you think
Yeah.
we can get this and this done? All right, I think I can get this and this done, and that's when we start splitting responsibilities and kind of bouncing to get things done. I think,
Mhm. I
and then
also
from
think
there, go
oh,
ahead.
god. One of the first things I think we're gonna do before we go off exploring, I don't know if we would make the shelter or not. I think it would depend on how good or bad that one night was, and if we found like a suitable, just like a rock overhang, if that was like good enough. But I do think the first thing you and I would do is actually take note of what supplies we had and secure those before we went off.
That's true. I also think like it just depends on how we figure out. So here's the thing. I think you and I would probably agree on most of the major stuff. So
Yeah.
things like shelter is really important to establish quickly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Being able to have a way to start fires, or have kindling. I guess we have the fire kit, but I think we would agree more or less. Well, if we have to figure out shelter, we might as well figure out the kindling as well
True.
and just start stacking on that, right?
Mhm.
And so the
Mhm.
first thing we would do is say, okay, well, how are we going to build this shelter, right?
Mhm.
And that would be the first thing that we start trying to figure out how to
Yeah.
do. Um,
Mhm.
in which case, we would probably, at that point, since we've surveyed the area, we'd probably have some ideas between the two of us of ideal places for us to have shelter.
Mhm.
Um,
I almost
us,
feel like, because if the beach had all the rocky outcrops, I feel like we would make it there first. Like, let's just say we're just using the tarp, right? Tarp, paracord, cover that overhang, and like we're good. And then I think we'd make a decision later if we come across a better spot for shelter, then we move. But I almost feel like a that would be
luxury
kind of a
decision.
result. Yeah, like I feel like that
Yeah.
would be a result of exploring. It'd be one of those like checklists, but it wouldn't be the main thing. The main thing's like, is there more food? Also, mile and a half, like when you think about it, if this, because I always picture kind of like a long or just a long island
Yeah.
for a mile and a half. I almost feel like you could potentially almost see the end of the island if you're sitting on the beach. If it is a long
Well, it's
island and not
square
curved.
miles, right?
Sure.
It's
I
a mile
don't.
and a it's a mile and a half squared. So you got to think, if you think a mile and a half straight down in one direction, right?
Mhm.
You got to do
Mhm.
that four other times, make it a right each time.
Was it squared? Hold on, let me look.
Like the island is small.
Oh, 1.5 square miles. You're right.
The island is small, but in order for us to circle the perimeter would probably take a couple of hours. And when I say a couple, I mean closer to like
True.
4 hours.
Mhm. No, you're right. Yeah. Well, because a mile is you could walk it in approximately 20 minutes, but if you're going through jungle, yeah, let's just tack on 40. So yeah,
Like
probably like four.
so we're talking about 6 miles altogether that we would have to that we would need to travel in order to circumnavigate, right? So if we were to kind of round up and say half an hour, um, a mile, right?
Mhm.
Um, at that point, we're talking about 3 hours. And then if we push it, say 40 minutes a mile, um, on average, then yeah, we're talking about 4 hours.
Mhm. Mhm. All right. Well, I also I should have asked it to put in counts because like for example with the waterproof matches, I'm just thinking a standard box of matches, right? Like what you get like 10, 20 matches. I almost feel like we wouldn't even try to make fire unless we absolutely needed to make those matches last as long as possible. And I do think we would be exploring, I would say maybe for the first 2 days. So maybe we pick a direction. Maybe for like the first 2 days, we're going and exploring together and like seeing what ideas we come up with. But I feel like once you get a good layout of the island, then it's like, okay, now we're divvying up like who's doing what, um, and gathering things. And I still feel like creating fire would be so difficult. The other thing I was thinking
Um,
about is like waterlogged wood. If it rains that frequently, are we gonna find a lot of dry wood? Like think about like community and jungle conditions, like how much of the wood is really dry.
I think it would be easier than it than I think we may be rationalizing. Like, here's a question, and I don't know the answer to this. Um, do palm leaves burn easily?
They should.
Because if that's the case, then finding dry palm leaves definitely won't be a problem.
But how dry would they be? I guess it depends. Like, how many rainstorms are we getting in a day? Is it
They do not burn well.
they it's because it's they probably smoke. They're probably like pine needles. If you've ever thrown pine needles into the fire, they burn up really quick, but it's mainly all smoke that they emit.
The leaves will not create sufficient heat. Okay. In a jungle,
Interesting. Well, good thing I get. Well,
how do
hmm.
you start fires? Okay, rainforest skills. How to make a fire in a rainforest. Ooh, that is loud in a video. I was really hoping for a document. Um, top
I was just
6 gritty
thinking.
ways to start a fire in the wild.
I was thinking about the vines too.
Hand
I
drill. Oh, go
probably
ahead.
just create a lot of the vines. It'll probably be the same thing if you're getting any type of vegetation other than wood. It's probably just going to smoke.
I feel like I don't have a problem generating the fire as much as I do understanding what are fire starting materials in the jungle. Right? Like if you give me the materials, I think I could create a fire.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to know what materials we have because that I think is the biggest determining factor. Like
Mm-hmm.
coming up with that like that hand drill, it would probably be a relatively bad version of it
Mm-hmm.
because I don't think I'm any kind of expert by any means. But I have a basic understanding of how to put things together and general physics, and I understand the core concept of being able to pull something and
Mm-hmm.
creating a rotation
Mm-hmm.
on some type of circular object to create a lot of friction really quickly, and then being able to pull the other way to continue that friction process. I don't think that's crazy to figure out. But what would you use it on is the bigger problem.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in a jungle,
Let
what?
me. I'm curious now. I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to tell us what. What materials do we have on
Hold on.
this
This is
island?
BS. This is why. Okay. This is this
Uh-huh.
is this is the stuff that makes me worried. In a jungle, what are fire starting materials? That's the question I asked. The answer I got was flint and a piece of carbon steel. Appreciate it. Thanks.
All right, you want to hear what I got?
Yeah.
On the Isle of Zarana, you have access to some natural materials that can help you start and sustain a fire. You want to take a guess at what the first one it listed was?
What?
Dried palm leaves and fronds.
Oh, awesome. Cool.
And then
Cool
it has
beans.
I was actually thinking about this, coconut husks, but again, I don't know how good
If
that would
that's
be for fires. Twigs and small branches, bark from trees, dry grass. Actually, the dry grass, yeah, but it's
the
going to burn
dry
really
grass is
fast.
huge. If we have dry grass, that's like half the battle right
Yeah.
there. I feel
But
like.
the thing is like I'm not reading a lot that's gonna that screams sustainable fire because all these things burn quick, and like they're really just used for starting a fire. Oh, rocks for sparking. Oh,
Rocks
that's
don't just
interesting.
spark though.
Depending on the type of rocks on the island, you might be able to use them to strike sparks if you find any quartz or flint like stones. And then the other one, this was interesting, bird down or feathers. If you find feathers are down, they can be fluffed up and used as tinder in a pinch as they catch fire quickly.
Um, I think one of the things that crossed my mind earlier, and is also being kind of thrown out here, is fungi. I think that has potential.
Interesting.
Um, Tender dried plants. Yeah, I think if we find a bird's nest, that's kind of fire because that's an easy win. You just gotta find a bird for it.
My first thought when you said mushrooms, I'm like, but wait, food. And then I was like, wait a minute. Fungi, it's such a toss up if it's going to be a good one or not. I don't
I
know enough
think
about fungi
I
in
think
other
it could go
places.
either way. I think I would risk it for the biscuit. For some for food, but if it's dry fungus, then for fire.
Mm.
Um,
I don't know if I would take that risk. I especially in a tropical island. I mean, thinking about like Puerto Rico or no, not Puerto Rico. Oh my gosh, Costa Rica with the poison dart frogs. Like, no, I don't think so. I don't know.
um, here we go. See, I also mentioned this earlier. Um, Getting sap from trees.
Mm-hmm.
Sap burns hot and slow. And it's great tinder if you're working with wet materials.
Oh, there we go. Hopefully we find a sappy tree.
Reeds work really well.
Mm-hmm.
Feathery reeds, which in the jungle potentially cattails work really well. They grow
That makes
aggressively in
sense.
marshes, swamps, and other wetland environments. Um,
Well, I think that might be a good place to stop on our jungle
yeah,
adventure.
before I
But
get like caught up even more in this whole
you
kind
went
of
down the
thing.
rabbit hole, the jungle
Uh,
hole, I
the
guess.
jungle hole. Yeah, I would definitely kind of fall through the jungle hole. Uh, Head down first, face first. Um, yeah.
Well, what did you think of that going through that, having not done an exercise like that before?
Um, it's cool, and I have actually done an exercise like that. I just didn't
Mm,
realize that it was something that they did in schools. but I want to say that a lot of people have in some sense. Like,
Yeah.
we've done it in different ways. I've actually talked with my family about that show alone that you were talking about,
Mhm.
and we've had discussions on who would make it, who wouldn't.
Mhm.
Like, what are the things that you absolutely would bring? I've had that
Yeah.
conversation with them for sure. So definitely something that is like familiar to an extent. I like how you had ChatGPT kind of create this prompt though. I think it kind of
Mhm.
set the boundaries really well and gave us like enough to work with and enough
Mhm.
rope to hang ourselves, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think,
50 feet
yeah,
of it.
pretty cool. Pretty cool.
Cool. Well, I thought that would be fun. And I was also curious what you would say in a survival scenario, but I mean, not really surprising. You and I were pretty aligned on most of the items, so.
I think if you have like if you're functioning well enough, I think like Maslow's hierarchy of needs comes to mind, where
Mhm.
it's like
Mhm.
I mean, uh, maybe that's a bad thing to point out actually, because usually that's talking about like things way further into the triangle. But like when I think about that base level triangle, what are the things that we need, right?
Mhm.
Like food, we need shelter, we
Mhm.
need a place to uh, go to the bathroom. We need
Mhm.
like these are the core
Mhm.
essential functions, and I think with an understanding of that, like it's kind of there are certain things that if you're level headed and of conscious mind, because I if you're stranded on an island, there's a good chance you're not going to be level headed
Mhm.
or of conscious mind whatsoever. You're
Yeah.
probably in a panic, anxiety ridden state, and who knows if you're there with some kind of injury. Um,
Mhm.
how'd you end up there? Because if it is plane crashing, well,
Yeah.
you're probably
Well,
not great.
it's
If this is
interesting that you brought
lost,
that is oh god, please anything but lost. No, thank you. That was not our scenario. We were on a nice boating trip.
yeah, we were on
But
the we were on an experimental island where they could save us at any time.
right, right. Um but I thought it was interesting you did bring that up because in the show alone, I can without something unforeseen happening or like someone gets an injury that takes them out, mentality wise, I can usually pick very accurately who's going to be in at least the top of 3 or 4 just based on their intros. And what I found because I think the biggest thing you have, the biggest tool is your brain. And what I found is that when people are introducing themselves on the show, the reason why I'm so good at picking out who's going to be in the top like 3, 4 people is the way that they talk, not only about themselves, but about their families. And there's such a huge difference between I'm doing this for my family and we could use the money versus I'm doing this for my family because we've had a really hard time and we know what pain is. Because if you know what pain is and you've sat in pain, that is what's going to carry you through because so many people break thinking that like nah I'm fine, like I miss my family but it's only going to be a little bit. Like every single one of those people caves. um and so it's the people that know worse pain than what they're in and the pain means something to them are the people who are going to make it incredibly far. um or they've had very extensive mental training that has allowed them to go in that box. And like even people who are military that go on the show, there's only been a few of them that actually had the mentality needed to go far when in the seasons that I've seen. So I do think you have something there. You can have all of the luxuries, the acts and everything on the island, but if you don't have your minds, I mean that's it. You're
Yeah,
not really going to go
I
very
think that's
far.
probably the biggest thing. If you can think, problem solving is so huge, and I think
Mhm.
we don't often engage with it enough, or not necessarily that we don't. We're problem solving every day, so I don't want to say
Hmm.
that we don't engage with it enough, but I will say the types of problems that are put in front of us can kind of shape the way we formulate how we approach these things. Like if all of your problems are social problems and
Hmm.
you don't have any kind of puzzle solving in your life,
Hmm.
then I imagine this becomes a little harder for you.
Yep.
I think
Yeah.
it's just a much more difficult task because now the question is, well, who do I got to talk to get this thing? And
Hmm.
when there's only two people on the island, you got to talk to yourself, me, because the
Yeah.
other person is struggling right there with you, you know. And
Yep.
so, whereas like
The
if
other
you are, oh, go ahead.
No, no, keep going. I interrupted you.
Um, if you if you are kind of a natural, not natural, but you do puzzles in a sense, or you're into that kind of problem solving, where you're like, okay, well, what would I do? Right? I feel like um, you probably can generate much more interesting ideas that can lead to better outcomes.
Hmm.
Um, I don't know, but maybe that's all like just hearsay, just stuff that I'm
No,
just feels and vibes. Who knows?
I think there's some truth to it, but I also think there's truth to when you're forced to survive. You might do some things you wouldn't have thought that you could do. But the other thing I was going to say you have against you as well is physicality. So let's pretend we have the same body. There's not really a huge difference between each of us. People's bodies respond differently to the elements. And so historically, or at least like just using alone, a lot harder for women to make it. We have lower fat. We don't have the reserves, even in like muscle tone, to utilize. But what I also found was interesting is some people just can't handle malnutrition, not like mentally, but physically. And so you could have a person who's doing really well, but then something weird starts in their body because of the malnutrition, and you're not really going to know that until you get to that point. So that's another thing, very similar to the mind. It's you don't have as much control over that because you can only eat what you can eat. So
True enough. All right, people. Let's get out of here. My question for y'all. I'm not gonna be basic. I'm not gonna do the. Although I wanted to take the easy way out. Let me. Do you have a question? Because I'm still kind of thinking about mine.
if you are shipwrecked on an island, what is the one natural thing, natural element that you would want to see on that island? So, for example, ours had the freshwater, we had some fruit, there might be some fish. Like, what natural element you get shipwrecked and you're like, I hope to God this is on this island?
My question for you guys is a two-parter. If you were to get shipwrecked on an island, since that's the theme, um, what do you think you would miss the most? What what's the thing that
Mm.
like you would struggle without, even with all of your basic needs met? What's that thing that kind of um, pulls at you? And if actually no, I think that that one question alone is pretty solid. What's the one thing you would miss? What's the one thing that you would that would pull at you?
Mhm. That's a good one.
Hmm.
Cool.
All right, y'all.
Head first, face down.
Head first
Away
face
from that
down.
shipwreck. No.
Oh, away from,
Swimming
please,
to the rescue
please,
boat.
please, to the rescue. Oh, please. All right, it was fun, y'all. Have a wonderful afternoon, night, morning, evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. Have a fantastic future.
See you guys.
Bye.